Okay, we've removed the rear collet. I've dropped it into the pliers there because it's a heat interference fit. Managed to pull the magnetic magnetic rotor off the stators. It was a little difficult to get out. It didn't slide very nicely. So I will be checking to see if our shaft has a bend in it, and if it does, we will have to pull that out and replace it. Nonetheless, try and get that into focus. If we look through the magnets, it looks like they're all intact. So nothing looks bad in that respect. So I wish I'd looked up how to pull these apart before I tried to pull it apart, but yeah, it's starting to go easy. Okay, so we've put the shaft into the chuck and we're going to spin it both ways. We're going to check for a bent shaft. It's not great on the propeller end. It's not great on the propeller end, but it seems to be okay on this end. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be fine, but we'll see what the next test is like. Okay, chucked it in on the propeller end. Let's see what it wants to do. It's not great. The chuck doesn't look amazing either. Okay, so I've spun the rotor from both ends, and it seems to be fine. Maybe the hand drill has a bit of off-centered rotation, eccentric rotation, so I might have to take this into the workshop on Monday and get it checked properly. But if this is fine, we were grinding sort of in here, and that suggests, if this is fine, which I'd be amazed, but it suggests that we have some bearing trouble either in the top or the bottom bearing. You can see there's an empty casing in there, and we have some bearings pressed into place here. So if I run my finger on it, they seem okay, but not really great. So I'm feeling for vibrations and sort of a sense of grinding in there, and I don't really seem to get it. If I look at the rear bearing, that seems okay. It doesn't really suggest that there's a problem, which is sort of annoying. Something isn't right with it. There didn't appear to be anything interfering between the magnets and the stators. maybe there was, maybe some of the junk that I pulled out of this is more than I thought. But it's not really convincing. The chassis does seem to sit flat, and that's really good news. It means that that the motor mount, horribly bent motor mount, bore all of that load. By the way, there is a secret little part in there, that little ring there. I was warned about in a YouTube video. It's tiny. It sits at the back here. It seems to act as a bushing between the collar and that bearing. This collar and that bearing. And it's tiny. Easy to lose, easy to miss. There's still a bit of gunk you can see around here, but I don't think that's what's going to be causing our binding. It could be that just by pulling it apart I've cleared it, but I'll give it a bit of a wipe and put it back together and see if it's turning okay. And if it is turning okay, I'll then put the collet back on. I'll inspect these connections a bit more. I may be able to just plug those into an ESC and test that the motor is functioning properly. It could be good news. Quite surprisingly good news given what's happened to it. Okay, so the halves are back together. I tried to clean them up a little bit, but decided in the end to just put them back together. It's a little bit tricky to show you, but it does have a kind of a grinding sound. I'm not really sure what that is. So I reckon I'm going to have to take it to the university workshop and see if we can spin it and just verify that it is actually running all right. It seems to be pretty close to good. I may even spin it up before then just to see if it's actually holding okay. Might be good news. If not, then it's a shaft and 2 new bearings probably. Hopefully they are reasonably available to press out and press back in. And just one other thing. When you put these back together, be really careful. Don't have your finger in this gap. There's not a lot of attractive force between these magnets and the coils for a reasonable amount of travel. But once this shaft passes through into the magnet, into the bearing, and that's fine, the pull gets a lot stronger and it pinches and it hurts.